moving away from the shores of the English Channel through the medieval town of Dinan, ending up in the capital of Brittany, whose citizens believe they live in the heartland of cycling. Here's Phil Liggett.
Of all the requirements necessary to win any Tour de France, the one that all the riders must have is the ability to ride the time trial. They call this race the race of truth, and the reason, because you can't hide behind anyone. You've got to get out there and do it all by yourself. The tactic is quite simple. You go as fast as you can over the distance and hope your time at the end is the best. Now, for the riders in the Tour de France so far, the men who've wanted to win the Tour, they really haven't taken a great interest. They've just tried to make sure they haven't lost any time. Because here in Dinard, the race of truth makes the first real stage of the Tour de France.
Trailing the leader of the Tour de France, Ignacio da Silva of Portugal, by 3 minutes and 28 seconds, is American Greg LeMond, who warms up with a brisk ride through the streets, knowing that today he will find out the role he may play in the race. American Andy Hampsten is 3 minutes and 44 seconds back. But knowing that his specialty, the grueling climbs of the mountains, are still ahead, he just wants to stay close to the leaders. Laurent Fignon knows that time trial success helped him win in 1984. Pedro Delgado is not in last place anymore, but still trails the lead by almost 10 minutes. This week, he has not in an anxious way overextended himself to make up time, and that may prove to be an energy-saving move of experience. On the other hand, it might be difficult to figure out just what the Spanish star might be thinking.
This was the unexpected moment from the first day of the Tour. The start house empty. Pedro Delgado late for his starting time. Delgado is no stranger to drama. 3 years ago, he withdrew from the race in tears when he learned of his mother's death. Last year, his jubilation in victory was haunted by headlines linking him to drugs. And this year, the press accused him of bribing another rider. When he finally scrambled into the start house, Delgado had lost almost 3 minutes. He began his ride like a man trying not only to make up lost time, but also to outrun his star-crossed past. The late start set the stage for a long weekend's nightmare. Mobbed by the press, humiliated in the team time trial when the other members of his team were forced to wait for him because he couldn't keep up, he lost further time and acted like a man for whom the race might be already over before it had even begun. The first days of the week brought no respite. Former winner Fignon ripped him while the press had a field day at his expense. Even the Spanish papers seemed to delight in his fall from grace. Pedro's only relief has come at each morning signing-in ceremonies, when he knows that as the day's stage begins, at least aboard his bike, he will be left alone. So, how bleak is his outlook? Well, in 1949, Fausto Coppi, also a great climber, fell 20 minutes behind and still managed to win the race. Delgado knows that, like Coppi, his strength is in the mountains, that last year he entered the mountains 2 minutes back and emerged 4 minutes ahead. But he also knows what those 6 minutes cost, and the rivals he faced then were weaker than those he faces now. 9 minutes, 57 seconds back. Is it too much?
The 29-year-old defending champion of Segovia, Spain. 5'8", 140 pounds, and muscles as tight as the strings on a violin. He begins his 45-mile individual time trial ride with a slight English Channel breeze at his back.
Delgado begins his effort in the first hot sunshine of the Tour. And with his main rivals not due to start for 3 more hours, he's no alternative but to give his all and hope his time is the best at the end of the day. His solid carbon fiber disc wheels, costing $2,000 a pair, can help a top rider improve as much as 10 seconds a mile when compared to the normal spoked ones. Motivated, Delgado has come here to take all or nothing.
Being the first of the star riders to go, optimism must be tempered for Pedro Delgado. But at the intermediate time check, he is 3 minutes and 25 seconds faster than the best time recorded so far.
He was so nervous before beginning this run, he couldn't eat. The late Jacques Anquetil, 5-time winner of the Tour, once said, "The man who wins a stage like this is the man prepared to suffer the most." And Delgado appears prepared to do just that. Definitely a man on a mission.
But the body must be fed, and Pedro Delgado grabs his favorite mystery liquid.
And in an effort like this, the fluids must be kept topped up and the body salts replaced in full. Each rider will choose that which suits him.
A water chaser to complete the meal. Having passed what seemed to be a person for every foot of this 45-mile ride, Pedro Delgado enters the city of Rennes, completing a ride that could only be termed spectacular.
This is an inspired ride by a man fighting to survive, and Delgado is doing more than that.
The final numbers show that Pedro Delgado eclipses the best time so far by more than 4 minutes. With a ride that strong, we know that Pedro Delgado will make up some time by the time all the riders have gone. But with the other stars still to come, it is impossible to say how much. He'll just have to wait, knowing that he's coming back, and that for now, he has the clock headed in the right direction. Play to the crowd. Earlier, he showed that sometimes of all the faces in that crowd, he sees only one who looks like she'd like a souvenir. He has won this race before by a scant 40 seconds. Now, having given away his hat, he prepares to put on another for a time trial, knowing clearly what's at stake.
You got to try and lose the minimum of time on any one day. And this is what I mean when I say you got to be regular to win a Tour de France. Like when you cross the finish line, the stopwatch stops. And any seconds you have lost, there could be valuable seconds in the end of a Tour de France. So you've got to fight to the end every day to try and get to the danger men. If Joe Soap is in front of you, then there's no problem. But if you've got Delgado, who's 45 seconds ahead of you, getting 45 seconds back on Delgado or Fignon or any of these guys can be very, very hard.
2 years ago, Stephen Roche won the long time trial and went on to win the Tour de France. But this day, the Irishman, like Greg LeMond, is fighting back from injury. He's racing now into the unknown. Roche starts like his former self, and at 13 miles has the best time so far, a second better than Delgado.
The wind has shifted and is now hitting Stephen Roche in the face. And that is the challenge as well for Andy Hampson of the 7-Eleven team, who in many ways has been the quiet man of this tour.
Hampston has a keen sense for strategy, and he rarely pushes himself to the limit on relatively flat courses like this one, believing that going all out here might gain him a few seconds now, but cost him minutes in the days to come. The American penchant for experimentation is evident here. Note the unusual handlebars, which help the rider to achieve a good aerodynamic position. Invented for triathlons like the Ironman, this is the first time they have been allowed in the Tour de France. And what looks like an overscale watch on his wrist, that's a heart monitor.
Approaching the finish, Roche's fast start has not been maintained. The rain, often torrential, has played in Delgado's favor. Roche has lost almost 3 minutes to Delgado in the last 30 miles.
As Roche gently slides through the final turn, he reinforces a couple of points. One, that Delgado's time was as good as it seemed. And two, even the stars would have a difficult time challenging what Pedro had done due to the wind and the rain. 1:41.34. Stephen Roche 4th place in Stage 5. His strategy for the overall Tour de France was still intact. 1:38.36 is still proudly displayed at the finish, and you can't help but think that Pedro Delgado is about to change the makeup of the Tour de France. The rain is moving north. Andy Hampsten is moving south. At Dinan, the two collide. Remember, Hampsten's strategy is to try to minimize his losses against the top speedsters in a stage like this and position himself to attack in the mountain stages now just a few days away. At this point, though, he is almost 3 minutes behind the ride of Pedro Delgado.
Sweeping into Dinan at 35 miles an hour and hoping nobody steps suddenly out of that crowd.
At the start waits Greg LeMond, not looking towards the road upon which he will soon ride, looking instead within himself on the biggest day of racing he's had in 3 years.
Andy Hampsten, 4th and best rookie in the Tour de France in 1986, personifies streamlining as he races towards the end of the 45 miles time trial. Hampsten's racing to limit his losses with no illusions of winning the test. Hampsten just wants to make sure he keeps in touch with the pace for the days ahead.
So much of Andy Hampsten's life has been focused on the winning ride in the Tour de France. He tasted it as Greg LeMond's teammate when Greg had the ride. Now the preparation has come from the strong strides atop cross-country skis in mountains near Boulder, Colorado, and in holding back just a little bit in races this year so that when the moment approaches, he'd be ready. The mountains will provide the moment, and while Andy has been the quiet man of this race so far, it is almost time to speak up. And this finish still allows him to do just that. But it will take the help of teammates like Sean Yates, whose pacing may be a key and whose effort here should provide Hampsten with a lift, and the knowledge that Yates will be ready when the moment comes, because Yates is right behind him.
Sean Yates is a thoroughbred when it comes to producing pure speed. And last year he won the fastest time trial in Tour history. But this day, the Englishman is behind Delgado at all of the timing points. Injured, Yates still produces a ride to keep him close to the leader.
A lot may hinge on that leg that Yates injured last Tuesday, for 7-Eleven has already lost Tour de Trump winner Dag Otto Lauritsen. Right now, Andy Hampsten.
This day was billed as the day that maybe the real push for the finish begins. Do you feel that way? And if so, how do you evaluate your performance?
Well, every day is the beginning of the end. But so far, I mean, I really don't know how I did just today, but, you know, I did everything I could. I mean, up till now, everything's been great. So, you know, I don't think I lost that much time. Anyone real dangerous, but I really don't know.
Last Tuesday, Sean Yates may have just been riding behind the wrong man. Greg LeMond represents the first of the final few capable of challenging Delgado's time. While Delgado, because of his deficit, cannot yet catch the leaders, there is the feeling that someone must show him that his comeback won't be that easy. Greg LeMond knows about comebacks. He knows his start in the Tour de France has been a good signal, but he also understands that a good ride here can mean a lot more. During all the times Greg was down, battled thoughts of quitting, and finally stuck it out, he believed there would come the time when he would know his status. And deep down he knew that destiny would mean that time would probably come in the Tour de France.
LeMond's 4th in the prologue a week ago and a 2nd in the final time trial in last month's Tour of Italy are the cornerstones of his renewed confidence. From the waist up, a pro cyclist looks like a human being, while from the waist down, he seems more like a machine, an engine that powers the bike.
At the start, the man who shares many of the same feelings as Greg LeMond, Laurent Fignon. Now the two of them are joined again on the road at the same time, chasing a carrot that has been dangled by Pedro Delgado. It is important Fignon show he can keep up with whomever decides to set the pace. First, that was Delgado. Now, it is LeMond.
Greg LeMond is in the process of passing a man who started 8 minutes ahead of him. He is just 44 seconds back of Delgado's pace to this point. Greg's son Jeffrey is 5 years old. He was 2 when Greg won the Tour in '86 and was injured shortly afterward. Instead of a memory of his dad as a champion, Jeff has seen him struggling to make a comeback until this week. All at once, Jeff's dad seems back the way he used to be when he was great.
There's no doubt now LeMond is feeling the thrill of success. And when Laurent Fignon set off, he was aiming at Delgado's time. Now he has to match a fresh target because word has filtered down that LeMond is setting a new standard and almost unthinkably could be wearing the yellow jersey by the end of this stage.
But the last man to go wearing the leader's jersey for now is Acasio da Silva of Portugal, who has been riding with the color of honor since stage 1. Meanwhile, Greg LeMond is closer to the finish line, a line that seems destined to tell a lot about the men who can't wait to get there and the color of the shirt they'll wear when they do. Possible, but the last checkpoint has confirmed it. His sleek helmet, downhill skier posture, and a huge heart-pumping overtime is overtaking Pedro Delgado's time. Greg LeMond seems like he is about to take the lead in stage 5 of the Tour de France.
Despite the wet weather and an unsureness of which way to go, LeMond is turning a dream into reality.
Regardless of what happens now, in this tour, in this stage, or in other tours, the moment Greg LeMond's wheel touches the white line, he will know whatever sacrifices he made were worth it. He was the story of 1986, more famous in Europe than at home. And as quickly as he stumbled, the press grumbled about Greg LeMond. Now you can see he's being massaged by clumsy hands, the way the European press says to Greg LeMond, welcome back. Out on the course, the plot is thickened by Fignon. He is 41 seconds behind LeMond's pace. He led LeMond by 51 seconds when the day began. It is apparent that LeMond and Fignon are destined to have everyone staring at the clock. Confusion seems to be the operative word for the mood at the finish, heightened by the fact that Greg LeMond may be winning the stage and the yellow jersey. Laurent Fignon heads to the finish.
Fignon is a Frenchman riding on French roads, and after 5 years of injury, he's healthy now for the first time since he last won this race, and the crowd is loving it.
Already, Fignon's time is not good enough to beat LeMond's and win the stage. And the moment it has taken him longer than 1:39.03 to finish the 45-mile course, he won't wear the yellow jersey. There could be a message here. His experience may be telling him that if he goes too fast, the yellow jersey may be his, and the pressure that comes with it. That may not be in the game plan of a shrewd Parisian who knows the game. He may only care to wear it on the race's last day. Could he have played it that close? The yellow jersey is speeding towards the finish on the body of Acasio da Silva. But even though he is passing the man who started before him, he will be taking off that shirt he has worn since he claimed it way back in the first stage in his family's home of Luxembourg. He will never forget the honor. After 2 years of darkness, the shirt brings in the color of the sun. The yellow jersey has always been a symbol of cycling's greatest race. Greg LeMond has said the only yellow jersey he cares about is the one you get to wear in Paris, which would mean you've won that race. That yellow jersey for LeMond is a long way off, but this one is a symbol that it is possible for him to do it once again. The final standings of this, the 5th stage, reveal that LeMond, Delgado, and Fignon put on quite a show. And after 5 stages, LeMond's lead is 5 seconds over Fignon. And note that Pedro Delgado, who once was 198, is now 28 and trailing by less than 7 minutes.
Terrific ride.
Yeah, I'm extremely happy. I don't know what to say.
A week ago, you spoke to us cautiously about your comeback. Did you have any idea then that it would reach this magnitude?
Well, I had some feeling inside that I would have some very good results, and it's still early on in the Tour de France, and I'm a little afraid for the mountains, and I could have some more difficult days, but you know, I can't refuse a victory, and I can't refuse the yellow jersey, especially what I've been through, and I think to me this is as good an accomplishment as me winning the Tour de France in '86, considering what I've come through. I think
It's been a long road back.
It's great to be back, but you know, it's still a ways. Only one thing I know is that my future looks great, and I think that I'm going to return stronger than before.
But does this change your assessment of the rest of the race? Do you give yourself a better chance overall than you did?
Yeah, definitely. I was going to be happy to be in the top 20. Now I'm shooting for a top 5, and who knows, maybe even better. But I still want to keep things calm and realistic, because excuse me, I know I've had some, this is a very good result. I've had very good results in the last month. The last 3 weeks is another thing. I've had only 1 year of really non-stop training, and to expect to win the Tour de France, it's going to be a difficult thing.
The battle has been joined. Pedro Delgado is back in the race, showing how quickly the Tour can change. But at the front, two men whose careers have been close before, now separated in the standings by 5 seconds. On the roads of the Tour de France, that's a matter of inches.